My wife has been insisting that we have a three-way with my sister. When I put my foot down and told her no, she took matters into her own hands. My wife of 7 years is bi, and this is no secret as she told me this when we first started dating. This has never really affected our relationship however, she has always been fiercely loyal, and I never considered the fact that she is bi a problem for me. That was until a few months ago she started dropping hints about wanting to enter a poly relationship specifically so she could go out and sleep with other girls. She did not want to enter an emotional relationship with them, but did want to sleep with them. Immediately, I shut this suggestion down as I was not into that sort of thing at all. She asked me several times, and each time I put my foot down harder and harder. She even tried to coerce me into doing so by promising me that I could have 3 ways with her and her partner, but this made me even more mad. This wasn't a one-time thing either, she kept at this request for weeks in total, and it created a huge rift between us for said time frame. It was almost like she was unwilling to let this poly thing go. It was only when I told her that unless she stops I will file for divorce that her endless badgering came to a halt. She did not speak of this again for a while, and she even apologized to me for relentlessly asking me to be poly. For the next 2 months everything was good in our relationship. Although the fact she insisted on being poly a few months prior still harped at me, I was willing to let it go. She had let it go after all herself. That was until a family holiday a month ago. My parents invited me, my wife, and my sister Jess to a holiday in Bali. This was the first holiday we had a chance of taking as a family since the virus, so we were all quite pumped to go. The holiday itself lasted around a week, and went by phenomenally. Lots of beach trips out, restaurant visits, and we even stayed at a hotel near the coastline. There was one thing that caught my eye during the holiday however. That was the way my wife acted around Jess. She seemed a little flirty. Whenever we were at the beach, I found my wife's eyes gazing at Jess way too often. If we were out my wife insisted that we sit beside Jess, and she was all up in Jess' personal space. Now, there's 2 things that make me a little uneasy about this. Jess is very conventionally attractive, I know she's my sister, but I still wouldn't say no. The other thing that makes me a little wary of this is that Jess is a lesbian, and my wife knows this. This is why I found my wife's actions at the family holiday a little peculiar to say the least. I talked to Jess about it at the end of the holiday, and she said that she picked up the same vibe as me. She did say that although she found my wife immensely attractive and under any other circumstance she would go for it, the fact she was her brother's wife made it off limits. I then made the mistake of confronting my wife about this just a few days after the holiday. My wife denied it at first, but I could tell that she was hesitating before answering my questions about Jess, and so finally after applying enough pressure, she cracked and admitted that she found my sister irresistibly hot. Hearing this broke my heart, but what hurt even worse is the next words that came out of my wife's mouth. I know I told you I won't ever ask again. But if you let me sleep with your sister just once, I won't ever ask to be poly again. You can even join us if you want, we can have a 3-way. Please. The audacity of my wife actually had me gobsmacked. I replied, so let me get this straight. You seriously think that I'm gonna let you F my sister? Also, what kind of proposal is that? Oh, he might say no to just us 2 effing. But if I also let him F his sister, he might say yes. What kind of thinking is that? I admit, my response was very rude, but I honestly had no other words to say. After a full month of me saying no to being poly, and her promising to let it go, she brings it up again. To no surprise, she did not take this lightly, and somewhat of a screaming match occurred. This screaming match ended in me telling her that, if she doesn't like being just with me she can pack her stuff and leave. We slept in separate rooms that night. We kept sleeping in separate rooms for the next 2 weeks, and we did not talk too much. At some point I let her know I was not interested in talking to her until I get an apology from her, and she said she was not interested in talking until she got an apology from me. And so things stayed that way. The only things we discussed were bills, work, and household chores. We watched TV in silence sometimes too. Needless to say that physical affection was scarce. We did not even kiss, and it felt like the relationship was quickly dying. Well, it fully died a few days ago. A few days ago I was meant to be working late, and I informed my wife of this. Well, my work was finished super early, even earlier than most days, and my boss was gracious enough to let me go early. When walking in through the front door, I expected silence and the atmosphere to be as tense as it has been. Instead, when I walked in I heard our bed squeaking. I saw shoes, not my wife's shoes, on the floor, and I headed upstairs to investigate the scene. I could already guess what was happening, but I wanted to confirm. It was in our room that I saw it. My sister Jess, and my wife, getting it on. And not only were they getting it on, it was some of the freakiest stuff I've ever seen. My wife had my sister tied and blindfolded. Walking in and seeing your wife do that to your sister is something I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. When my wife saw me she instantly covered up and untied my sister, begging me to let her explain. But I did not. I simply left the house and drove away. I've been staying with my best friend for the past few days and he's aware of what's going on. I've blocked both my wife and my sister, as well as my parents as their calls are never ending. I truly don't know what to do. So it's been a few months since I caught my wife and my sister in the bedroom and things have been a poop show to say the least. The first thing I did was contact a divorce lawyer as per the advice of my best friend. I know this was an obvious move and one I should have probably done a long time ago, but my wife is the love of my life. This decision was extremely hard regardless of the circumstances surrounding it. During this time period as well, I unblocked my sister and asked her to explain to me why she did it. She told me that my wife had drunk texted one day, coincidentally on a day where my sister was drunk too. She said that in that moment all of her inhibitions were gone. She said that the alcohol made her let go of her morals and she partook in flirtatious texting with my wife. Then once she was into it, she could not stop herself, and that's how the affair started. Apparently, this was not the first time they had slept together, it was just the time that I caught them. My sister begged me to forgive her over and apologized so many times I lost count, but ultimately I told her that there's no way I could forgive her. I proceeded to let her know that even though she is family, I would like to go no contact with her for the near future at the very least, and asked her to give me space, as well as not to reach out first. That is the only way I see us continuing our relationship in the future. I then proceeded to block her. I also got back in touch with my wife, but not to hear her try make amends. I simply let her know that I have contacted a divorce lawyer and suggested she does the same thing. Before she even tried to make me reconsider, I told her that my decision was final and any attempt to make me reconsider will be ignored. Despite this, she reached out begging me to change my mind a lot, and my answer each time was no. Currently we are finalizing the divorce and my decision is final. I can tell this has been hard on my soon-to-be ex-wife. She looks like she has been drinking more, eating and sleeping less, and she tells me she misses my company a lot. As for myself, I have moved out and have found a small apartment to start fresh in. I'm still young, only 27, I have time.
Wife's perspective. First things first, I know I effed up badly. I made a huge mistake and I deeply regret it, but I had my reasons. So for the first 7 years of my marriage with my husband I deeply suppressed my desire for sleeping with women. You see, my husband was right, I am bi, but I'm mostly lesbian. I would say I lean 90/10 towards women, and the fact that I could never sleep with women was killing me on the inside. Sure, I had done things behind my husband's back, but they were only minor, a kiss here or there or subtly flirting with female co-workers, nothing major. I was not a person who wanted to cheat on her husband, but it got to a point where I could no longer hold in my desire and I approached my husband with them. I asked him if he would be open to a poly relationship. I knew that the thought of him with another woman would kill me, but I wanted other women so badly that I was willing to make this trade-off. Well, my husband did not see it this way. No amount of begging and pleading, or even rational reasoning got my husband, and he put his foot down. I ended up letting it go, as I understood that no amount of asking him would make him say yes. I thought long and hard and I thought I was willing to put my desires to rest. That was until I saw his sister at the family holiday in Bali. Jess has always caught my eye as a very attractive woman, but it was only when I saw her in a two-piece bikini on the beach that my fantasies about her started running wild. I have always been into athletic girls, and her body was that of a pure athlete. I wanted her so badly, and I knew that she was lesbian, and also knew she found me attractive as she had said so before. During this holiday we made out when drunk, but agreed to never do it again. My husband never suspected this. However, after the holiday he did ask me about it. I didn't want to admit it, but I eventually did. I then asked him to sleep with his sister, and he said no again. I promised to him that this was the only thing I wanted, and if he let me have it I would never pester him about being poly again. He kept saying no, and I kind of gave up in my mind. It was that night that I checked out of the relationship, and before going to bed I had a full bottle of wine to myself and drunk texted Jess. She responded almost instantly too, and she happened to be on a night out. We exchanged flirtatious texts and that's how our affair began. For the next 2 weeks my husband and I did not talk, and I was texting and meeting up with Jess every second or third day. We always did it at her house while my husband was at work. The one day we decided to do it at mine. My husband was supposed to be working late and so I suggested she come over. I told her I had a surprise for her and since my husband and I's bed was king size, it was better and more spacious. Well, our world came crashing down when my husband caught us. That's when I realized what I had done. When my husband left I realized just how much I was missing out on without having him there. He was the breadwinner that paid for everything, he helped with chores, he cooked dinner most nights. All I did was stay at home while he was away, wishing a woman would come by. It was heartbreaking when my husband blocked me. Jess and I tried to continue our affair but to no avail, the guilt of what we did caught up to us, and we are no longer in contact. The next few months were painful, I think I cried every single night. I resorted to a lot of alcohol and binge-watching TV. I texted a lot of women and even joined dating apps, trying to fill the void that was missing with endless intimate encounters with other women, but no matter how attractive they were, my husband was always on my mind. I even broke down crying during intimacy with a random woman I had met on Tinder one of these times. No matter how much I begged my husband, he didn't forgive me. The divorce is now finalized, and I'm deeply hurt. I was with him for 10 years. He's the love of my life. Why did I have to be so stupid? I hate myself for the way I am. Why couldn't I just control my desires?